South Africa holds a unique position on the global stage. It is an upper-middle income nation and one of the world's most prolific exporters of top-tier agricultural products, shipping thousands of tons of high-quality produce across the globe every year. Yet, step away from the macroeconomic data and look inside millions of households, and a completely contradictory reality emerges. A massive segment of the population cannot access basic, nutrient-dense food. We see modern, pristine mega supermarkets stacked high with vibrant produce, situated just miles away from urban townships, where daily meals consist almost entirely of empty starches. The country's malnutrition crisis is not the result of a barren landscape or a lack of supply. It is the product of an engineered, systemic failure. This failure manifests in a phenomenon health experts call the double burden of malnutrition. The first burden is the stunting crisis. Right now, a quarter of all children under the age of 5 suffer from permanent physical and cognitive stunting due to severe early life nutrient deprivation. The second burden occurs in adulthood. Driven by an intense reliance on cheap, highly processed white maize meal, 2 in 3 adult women face severe obesity and escalating rates of chronic illnesses like diabetes and hypertension. The human cost is devastating. According to data from the South African Human Rights Commission, over 1,000 children die every single year from severe acute malnutrition. Despite these fatalities, institutional response remains sluggish. The Government of National Union has continuously failed to align standard social grants with the rapidly soaring cost of a basic, life-sustaining nutritional basket. We are left with a cruel irony defining the modern diet. Entire communities are drowning in high-calorie carbohydrates, yet their bodies are physically starving for essential nutrients. This dietary landscape did not happen by accident. The over-reliance on refined starches is a direct, architectural legacy of the colonial mining era. When the gold and diamond mines exploded across the Witwatersrand in the late 19th century, the state and corporate monopolies faced a massive logistical challenge. They needed an incredibly cheap, high-calorie fuel source to feed hundreds of thousands of black migrant workers extracting wealth from deep underground. Their solution was to partner with commercial farming monopolies to mass-produce highly subsidized white maize. As this alien crop flooded the market, state support was deliberately stripped away from the cultivation of highly nutritious indigenous grains like sorghum and millet. The foundation of the modern South African diet was carefully engineered to maximize industrial labor extraction and corporate profit at the direct expense of human health. Decades later, you might assume democratic fiscal policies would have corrected this bias. Instead, we have what is known as the sorghum scandal, embedded deep within modern tax law. First, let's look at the baseline. Standard, nutrient-poor white maize is protected under law as a zero-rated essential foodstuff. This keeps it artificially cheap and ubiquitous on supermarket shelves. Raw sorghum grain holds that same zero-rated status, but there is a hidden policy trap. The moment a business attempts to process, flavor, or package indigenous sorghum for commercial retail, it loses that protection. It is immediately reclassified and hit with standard VAT or severe commercial sin taxes. Agricultural bodies and indigenous health advocates have fiercely lobbied the state to adjust this tax architecture to allow native crops to compete. The government has repeatedly refused. By maintaining this structure, the state is literally taxing the cure to the malnutrition crisis, artificially pricing resilient, ancestral foods completely out of the hands of the working class. But the answer to this state failure does not require a new government mandate. The solution is already growing in the soil. Consider amabele, or red sorghum. This is an ancient, drought-resistant titan. It requires a fraction of the water that commercial maize demands, and it provides a massive dose of low GI, iron-rich, slow-releasing energy. Then there is imifino, the wild amaranth greens that spring up natively across the landscape. According to the South African National Biodiversity Institute, these wild leaves hold up to 3 times more calcium and vitamin A than commercial iceberg lettuce. For decades, corporate food marketing has successfully conditioned the public to view these potent plants as obsolete poverty food, pushing consumers toward expensive, nutrient-empty alternatives. We must reject that psychological conditioning. These plants represent an elite biological arsenal. nutritionally superior crops uniquely engineered by the African climate to thrive where corporate monocultures fail. Transforming vacant urban lots and community spaces into Indus food forests allows neighborhoods to completely step the inflated prices of the supermarket supply chain. This requires bringing these ingredients back to the modern kitchen. A simple shift, like replacing a morning bowl of refined white maize with a dark fermented sorghum porridge, immediately reintroduces bioavailable iron and zinc back into the family diet. When communities begin demanding these specific crops, both at the household level and by integrating them into national school nutrition programs, they cut the artificial dependency on massive agricultural cartels. Returning to an indigenous plate transforms the kitchen into a tactical front line for biological autonomy and long-term survival. Walk into almost any modern supermarket, and you are surrounded by mountain-high bags of highly processed, refined white maize and pesticide-soaked less. But long before these supply chains existed, the African continent thrived on ingredients like wild amaranth greens, indigenous honeybush, and the rust-red pearls of sorghum hitting the stone mortar. In this guide, we are going to use those ancestral ingredients to construct a complete, nutrient-dense meal. You will learn the technique for preparing isibani, a fermented sorghum porridge, served with a concentrated honeybush and berry reduction. This meal addresses a specific physical toll. A modern diet built on commercial white maize provides almost pure starch. It spikes blood sugar and leaves communities undernourished despite consuming high calories. Returning to the indigenous tongue by cooking with these ancestral foods bypasses that artificial dependency. Preparing these ancient grains and wild botanicals is a practical way to reclaim personal health and food sovereignty from corporate agricultural cartels. Step 1 begins with the grain. Take 2 cups of raw, stone-ground red sorghum meal and place it inside a glass bowl. Mix it with warm water until it forms a smooth, thick paste, and cover the bowl with a cloth. We have to choose this grain because it was systemically marginalized. During the late 19th century, the colonial state needed an incredibly cheap, high-calorie food source for hundreds of thousands of black miners. They partnered with commercial farming monopolies to mass-produce subsidized white maize, while simultaneously defunding indigenous sorghum production. Look at the crowded, makeshift milling quarters in this mining compound. Maize was used as an instrument of industrial labor control, a fuel pumped into human bodies to extract gold from the earth. That system replaced highly nutritious ancient grains with a single refined crop. To restore the nutritional value of our grain, we need time. Leave your covered glass bowl to sit peacefully in a warm corner of your kitchen for a full 48 hours. This diagram illustrates what happens during those 2 days. Wild lactobacillus bacteria from the air enter the paste and naturally ferment the grain. As you can see, the bacteria break down the phytic acid, making the iron and zinc content bioavailable for the body to absorb. After 48 hours, you will smell a clean, sour tang. The act of fermenting this sorghum reverses the effects of colonial dietary engineering, restoring a grain that is low GI, gluten-free, and high in protein. While our fermented paste is ready, we need to prepare the base for our glaze. Step 2 is brewing 3 cups of highly concentrated tea. Take 4 tablespoons of loose-leaf honeybush, submerge it in boiling water, and let it steep for 15 minutes to extract the deep, woody tannins. Honeybush and rooibos grow natively in the fynbos biome of South Africa, nowhere else on Earth. The indigenous San and Khoikhoi people utilized these wild shrubs for thousands of years, developing a precise medicinal knowledge of their high antioxidant properties. These massive burlap sacks represent a century of commercial extraction. For decades, international corporate entities commercialized these native plants and patented their properties, while indigenous communities were excluded from the global wealth generated by their ancestral botanical knowledge. That structural imbalance led to the 2019 Access and Benefit Sharing Agreement. Under this legally binding mandate, commercial agricultural cartels must now pay a 1.5% royalty on the raw material value directly into a trust fund for the National Khoisan and San Councils. When you source and steep ethically harvested native teas, you participate in that legal victory. Your ingredients directly contribute to the economic restoration of the soil's original guardians. Now, let's bring the dish together. Bring 3 cups of water to a rolling boil in a pot. Slowly whisk your fermented sorghum paste into the boiling water, keeping the motion steady so the grain does not clump. Lower the heat immediately. Cover the pot and let the porridge simmer gently for 30 minutes, stirring occasionally. You are looking for a dark purple velvety texture. As the porridge thickens, we build the glaze. Take your steeped honeybush tea and strain the clear amber liquid into a heavy-bottom saucepan over an open flame. Add raw fine Bose honey, 1 stick of cinnamon, and crushed wild berries. Bring it to a boil. Turn the heat down to a low simmer and leave it for 45 minutes. As the water evaporates, the natural sugars in the honey and the berries will caramelize alongside the honeybush tea, transforming the liquid into a thick, glossy, ruby-red reduction syrup. The result is a concentrated syrup, floral, sharp, and medicinal. It serves as a direct functional replacement for imported balsamic reductions, relying entirely on the natural chemistry of the native fruit and honey. The final component to balance our meal is a side of fresh imifino, indigenous wild leafy vegetables like wild mustard greens and amaranth. Look at the dense concrete layout of this township. Space is highly restricted, and commercial fresh produce is expensive. But imifino is exceptionally resilient. It springs up in vacant lots and community-managed gardens right in the middle of these concrete grids. This chart compares the nutritional profile of wild imifino against corporate iceberg lettuce. As you can see, the wild greens hold 3 times more iron, calcium, and vitamin A. They are nutritional powerhouses that cost nothing to grow. By transforming vacant city lots into indigenous food forests, community organizers create an immediate, localized supply of these greens. This allows residents to feed their children elite nutrition while bypassing corporate supermarket monopolies. Cultivating traditional greens is a practical form of urban agriculture. It mitigates the impact of food inflation at the household level and reclaims biological autonomy. It is time to plate. Ladle the dark purple sorghum porridge into a bowl. Drizzle it with your glossy honeybush glaze and serve it alongside a vibrant, steamed portion of peppery wild greens. For decades, our food system conditioned people to view these ingredients as inferior. When you look at this plate, you see a nutrient-dense meal that exists outside the corporate supply chain. It is evidence that a local kitchen can be self-sustaining. The path forward starts when you refuse to let your ancestral palate be erased. Your kitchen is a practical frontline in the effort for food sovereignty. To help you integrate these ingredients into your daily routine, you can download the digital guide, Food and Resistance, The Indigenous Tongue. Visit the links on screen, ko-fi.com/748D77837 or payhip.com/bis5d7 for 20 recipes for ancient crops, wild fruits, and modern culinary techniques. Equip your mind, choose your ingredients, and support the community-led preservation of flavor. We are rebuilding this nation brick by brick and grain by grain. Inkosi Isikeleni